my name is Danielle Harvey and I work with Coldwell Banker Realty, and I am sitting down today with Catherine Davis with Allstate Insurance. I'll have her introduce herself a little bit more.
Sure. Catherine Davis, like she said, I've been an agent for 20 years and I'm in the Boulder County area and love what I do.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about perhaps you're buying a home for the first time or you're moving to Colorado and you're not really aware of what our process looks like for buying a home. One of the first things that you're going to want to do when you do find that home that you want to put an offer on is making sure that the home is insurable. So not only do you want to really look for, shop around for rates and things like that, but you want to actually make sure that you can obtain insurance on it. And that's a huge thing that a lot of people tend to overlook. So I want Catherine to explain that a little bit more in detail.
Sure. So it's on the buyer's contract, as you know, that there's usually an insurability deadline about 10 days, 2 weeks after. And that's because insurance companies look at how many claims there are on the house that's for sale. If there are too many claims, and too many can be about 2 or 3, so it's not a lot of claims in the last 5 years, the house may be deemed uninsurable. So it's really important that at the beginning of purchasing a house, when you go under contract, that you look into that right away, because you don't want to find out after that deadline or right before you're closing that the house is not insurable. So it depends on how many claims are on the house itself. Now, most companies look at insurability that way. However, at Allstate, we don't look at insurability by looking at the house for sale, we look at the buyer. So, because just like when you get a mortgage loan, your lender doesn't look at the seller's credit report, they look at yours. Allstate does the same thing. We look at the buyer's claim record.
That's great. Is there anything that maybe perhaps somebody who was renting in the past could maybe consider as a benefit?
That's a great question. So if you're renting, one of the first things you want to do if you don't have insurance, renter's insurance, is to go get renter's insurance, because when you have current insurance, you get a fairly significant discount on your homeowner's insurance. It can be $100 a year to several hundreds of dollars a year, depending on how big the house that you're buying is. So it's well worth it. If you're a first-time home buyer, to go get renter's insurance. You should have it anyway, but if you don't have it, do it because you get a discount.
That's really great to know. One of the things that people tend to do when they are shopping around for insurance is specifically look at the price of how much it's going to cost them per month. But what would you advise somebody who is coming to you perhaps for the first time buying homeowners insurance, and what would you advise them to do as far as how in depth their policy should be, that kind of thing?
You know, I would say not just for first-time home buyers, but really for anyone buying a home or anybody who has home insurance, is to really take a good look of what kind of insurance they're getting, what kind of coverages they're getting. Because can I be really honest and candid?
Yeah.
Most people don't. Like, most people it's just one thing that they need to check off when they're buying a house. Or they're like, oh, I'm renewing right now. I'm renewing on my policy, and they shop it, not really looking at the coverages, but the coverages are so important. But when you are talking to different companies, so let me go back to your question. I think one of the most important things is shop it apples to apples if you can. Meaning, if one company tells you, it doesn't even matter which company you take. So let's say you went with company XYZ and they gave you $500,000 in coverage for the house, and you went with Allstate, and then you came to Allstate. Ask us for the exact same quote for the exact same dollar amounts and deductibles, and then compare them and see what looks better, because you can always adjust later what the appropriate numbers should be for your house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, instead of, because sometimes, because companies will maybe like underinsure you to get your business. Because if you got a quote for $500,000 from somebody, and you got a quote from somebody that said, we can insure your house for $350,000, you think, oh, that's the better deal, right? Well, no, not necessarily, because then you only have $350,000 to rebuild your house. But you can compare by just doing apples to apples. And then there's a lot of other things to look at too. Like, there's other different features that different companies may or may not have, like water backup, loss assessments. These are all different things. Building code is if your town changes the code to rebuild the house, you want to have that as an extra coverage. So part of it too, I think, when you're shopping is to make sure that you feel like you can trust the person you're talking to. So I'm going to talk about, like, if you are getting insurance from a 1-800 number, it's just, I highly discourage it, because having a local agent, you can pick up the phone and ask for advice in the future, and someone you know that has a lot of experience, as opposed to you'll guaranteed to talk to a different person every time. If I call it the 1-800 agent, right? Because if who you call is not a local 303 number, 720 or 970, you're calling an 800 number or an 888 number, you likely don't have a local agent, right? You're just talking to a different person every time. And the average experience of the people on the phone is probably going to be 8 months, right? You don't want to entrust your hundreds of thousands of dollars of a home to someone like that.
Yeah. I think it's really important to know too, when you're shopping around for coverage, when you are under contract on a home, that you might be, maybe perhaps you're in a tight budget, or perhaps you just feel like you're too busy. Just know that you can always reach back out to your agent and discuss coverage and be like, ooh, whoops, I didn't really give that enough thought. I really want to review the coverage I have. And so I want to kind of bring that back to you as sort of like a really local agent, hiring somebody, or going with a company that has like local eyes on the ground and knows your area, knows what's going on, and can really give you advice, is a game changer.
Yeah, that's it's really important actually to pay attention to that. When the Marshall Fire, as you know, we learned a lot from that, like just like you said, feet on the ground. We're like here, and so we've talked to builders on how much houses should be insured for, and you alluded to making changes after, because your insurance isn't permanent, right? You can, after closing, take a look at it and change it around if you need to. You can, and you definitely want to look at it every year. We reach out to all of our clients every year, and we only hear from 5 to 10% of them to review their policies. So unfortunately, that means if you got your policy 5 years ago, your coverages are about 5 years old. We do, Allstate and most insurance companies do adjust your coverages every year on your home, not on your cars, but on your home, according to like inflation cost, but it's a very conservative number. So if you haven't reviewed your policy in 5 years, or even 2 years, or 10 years, some people never review their policies, you could be underinsured, because the increase that we do is quite conservative. So you could be, and we found that with a lot of homes with the Marshall Fire, the people were underinsured.
I think that's a really great thing. We learned a lot from the Marshall Fire, and a lot of people thought, I'm living in the middle of a town, I'm not in the mountains. A fire would never happen as catastrophic as the forest fires that we're so accustomed to. But just really knowing that you want to be insured for the right amount is very important.
Yeah, I'll joke around a little bit that I think people think when we call them or reach out to them once a year that we're just trying to sell them something. But honestly, we do it because we want to make sure, because you are insured properly, because at the end of the day, you are the one who knows what the value of your home is, what's inside your home, what are your cabinets like, what are your hardwood floors like. Because we actually, can I tell you a real quick story? We had a call from someone right after the fire whose house didn't burn, but he's like, why am I insured for X amount? My house is $1 million. And he was mad at us, and we're like, sir, honestly, we don't know how much your house is worth every single day. We don't have a thing that we check everybody's, but you do, you live there. So when something changes, we equate it to like, would you ever call your doctor and say, why didn't you call me? My stomach has been hurting for a month. They don't know. Just like we don't know how much your house is going up in value. You really need to own it, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, that you know how much your house is worth. You know what's in your house, how, if you did an upgrade. Oh, can you ask me about renovations?
Yeah.
Because because we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I think renovations, and just when we sort of have a market like we did in 2021, like pandemic real estate market where just values were skyrocketing, perhaps you were bored during the pandemic and you did this massive renovation.
Lots of people were going to Home Depot.
Yeah.
Home Depot's stock, definitely went up.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that when you put the time and the effort or into a big project like that, that you really are protecting it through insurance.
Yeah, I know I like led you into it and said, ask me about renovations.
Yeah.
But when you do a renovation, sometimes people don't think about, we should increase our insurance, but not only should you increase it, but you should increase it at I suggest you increase it at the beginning of the renovation, because should something happen, so let's say your renovation's $100,000. Should something happen in the middle or closer to the end of the renovation and you've already paid $80,000 towards it, it's not going to be covered, right?
Yeah.
It'll so you want to make sure you add it. I feel if it were to me personally, I would add it at the beginning, especially if it's sizable. If it's a site, we have people that do $200,000 renovations because they do the basement and the kitchen, and then they go, we might as well do the bathrooms. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
They're like they add, and then all of a sudden it's a big renovation. You want to make sure you add it. You add the coverage to your home policy.
So we're accustomed to fires and hail here in Colorado, and so I want to talk a little bit about the importance of having a local agent such as yourself to really walk through whether or not we perhaps even want to make a claim and how that might impact you in the future. I mean, we hear the horror stories about insurance is dropping everybody and the news headlines, but what would you advise for somebody that's worried about that?
Great question, because we talked about insurability earlier, and that 2 or 3 claims could be too many, and you could get canceled. So that's what we're hearing. We are unfortunately hearing of some companies who are getting canceled, who are canceling their clients for hail claims or for the Marshall Fire. Thankfully, Allstate's not one of those. We've decided we're not any Marshall Fire type of claim or hail claims you don't get canceled for. But the biggest thing I would say to people is to be careful. Again, going back to making sure you have a local agent that you can call and say, hey, this is happening. I actually got one on Sunday. I got a call, I couldn't answer it, then I got a text that said, can you please call me ASAP? And then I couldn't call right there and there, and then second text said, I have, one of my pipes burst, and then so I called, and it was great that he can call somebody locally, because when you can't and you're calling back to the 1-800 number, 1-800-AGENT again, they 100% of the time will open a claim if you call and ask a question. They're just data entry people. They don't usually give you advice. Unlike if you have a local agent, they can give you advice. They can tell you whether or not, what will happen if you file this claim, or more importantly, is it covered? Because that's why Jay called. Jay was like, will this be covered? Because he wasn't even sure. And this is this is a guy he's not young. He's actually well educated. He's an attorney. He's like, I don't know if it's covered. Is it covered? You can't do that if you're calling an 800 number. They're just going to tell you, well, let me open the claim, and the claims adjuster will call you tomorrow because it's a Sunday, right? And then if it ends up being not covered, because what he actually asked is the pipe covered? And do you know if it's covered?
No.
It's not covered. The pipe bursting is not covered. What's covered is the resulting damage. And so the way he asked it, if I didn't give him a complete answer, I would have just said no. But I said, no, it's not. However, the resulting damage, he's like, the ceiling is caving in, the walls are all wet, that's all covered. So it's actually a much longer, but sometimes we'll get questions like that where it's a dishwasher. And if he called the 1-800 number, they would open a claim, and then the dishwasher's not covered. So when your dishwasher breaks, it's not covered. Like just like when your car breaks, it's not covered by insurance. But the resulting damage of the dishwasher breaking and getting water all over your hardwood floors, it's covered. So those are the kind of things why it's important to have a local agent, but also to be careful about filing any claim, because 2 or 3 claims could, depending on the type of claims, 2 or 3 claims could be too many and you could get canceled. when I had a client once who turned in a claim for a 700, they lost their luggage, turned in a claim, lost their laptop, turned in a claim, they got canceled.
Yeah.
They weren't with us. They called us and said, can you insure us? We couldn't insure them because when we checked their claim record, they had too many. And it was like maybe a total of $2,000 payout because it wasn't that much. So you just want to balance when do you file a claim and when do you not file a claim. Because insurance isn't meant to be something that pays for everything. Because if it did, it would cost a lot more.
It's really for those catastrophic.
Yeah. Does that make sense? So some people, because we get phone calls sometimes that say, why do I have insurance if you're not going to pay for this? And we're like, well, we could, like if I shouldn't claim it because it's for catastrophic reasons. Otherwise, insurance would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if they paid for everything.
Yeah. Let's talk just really briefly about maybe perhaps somebody's watching this video and they're moving to Colorado from a totally different environment, different state, different country, whatever it is. What are some considerations that they should have to prepare for? Maybe they're looking at a mountain house, maybe they're looking at something like that. What questions should they have?
So the first thing would be what you just said, which is a mountain house. If you're looking in the mountains or the foothills, you want to think about brush mitigation. An example would be if a tree is touching the house, that may be deemed as uninsurable. That house may be uninsurable, which is kind of crazy, but usually the insurance company, at least we do, we just go back to you and say, please trim the tree. Or even if there's not access from the street to the house, if there's not, because some mountain houses don't have paved driveways. Even what do they call it? The wood for your fireplace?
Oh, like a wood burning stove?
A wood? No, not so much. Just sometimes mountain houses will have cut up wood outside. That may be a mitigation issue, but brush is usually the biggest thing. There's different things, but if you're looking at a house in the mountains or the foothills, really paying attention to the brush and seeing, and then access to the house, how far is it from a fire station? Those are all things to consider. But my advice there is, as soon as you go under contract, or even when you're looking at a house, run it by your insurance agent and say, hey, will you take a look at the pictures? What do you think? Is this going to be a concern? We were looking at a house the other day because the client sent it to us ahead of time, and one of the first thing we picked up was the access to the house was, if it's a certain grade, won't be acceptable by insurance because they look at it as what if we can't go up that grade? What if there's snow? What if is the gravel bad? That type of thing. So it's good actually to be proactive. Once you go under contract, as you know, everybody gets very excited. The buyers are excited. The listing agent is excited. The buyer's agent is excited. But take a pause. Make sure you look at the insurance part, especially if it's in the mountains. Have someone look at it sooner than later. Can I talk about insurance inspections?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so because that made me think about how we do our own inspection. Every insurance company does their own inspection apart from the inspection that you guys do at Coldwell Banker. So what that is that at the time that we start the policy, so let's say you're closing a month from now and you call us today and we start the policy for a month from now, we process it, right? That's when that insurance inspection is ordered. It is not ordered when you get a quote. When you get an insurance quote, it's not ordered then. It's when you say, hey, Allstate, we want to go with you, and we process the policy. So that insurance inspection is ordered at that time. When it's ordered, it takes 2 weeks for us to get that report back. However, it takes 30 days if it's in the mountains or the foothills. So that's the other reason you want to get insurance as soon as you go under contract, so that insurance inspection is ordered and that we get the report back on any especially for brush, any outstanding items as far as insuring the house before you close, so that just in case, let's say the roof is too old and the insurance company comes back and says the roof is too old, you want to have enough time to negotiate with the seller. Instead of having that, because most people get insurance, the honest truth is most people get insurance about 10 to 15 days before closing. which means we get the report
Mhm.
after closing.
Mhm.
So then you don't have leverage anymore to negotiate with the seller.
That's really great. I don't think many people know that there is an insurance inspection. How involved is that? Are they going into the house
Great
and
question.
digging through it like a home inspector would? Or
It
what
is
are they doing?
normally what we call a drive-by.
Yeah.
A drive-by is we are not going inside. It's
Mhm.
not like the inspection that you
Yeah.
guys do.
Mhm.
It's a drive-by. We look at the house to make
Mhm.
sure the roof is acceptable. There, there's no hole in the middle of the front lawn.
Yeah.
There's no siding falling down. Brush. We look at brush. We look at anything that may deem it uninsurable. So those are some of the examples.
Mhm.
But if it's a high value home, they will get an interview, like they will get a phone call, and initially it'll be an interview over the phone about the house. They ask about square footage, what kind of upgrades do they have. After that call, the inspector will determine whether or not they'll come knocking on the door to inspect it inside. And then either that or they ask for pictures.
Okay.
They ask the homeowner to provide pictures of the house. But most of the time it is a drive-by inspection.
Okay.
So, which is why most people don't know about it.
Yeah.
Because they've never gotten a call.
Yeah.
Like if we do an inspection, how come I wasn't there?
Mhm.
It's usually just a drive-by.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. I really appreciate your time sitting down with me, Catherine, and just walking through what the insurance process looks like, what you should maybe consider when you're purchasing a home in Colorado, that sort of thing. So thanks so much.
Absolutely.